Alright, so here we are. Going to take a quick look at this DC Multiverse Mcfarlane Toys. This is the gold label Martian Manhunter. I personally have been looking forward to this one just because I was not a fan of the first Martian Manhunter. I didn't even pick it up. I took a look at it, and while it looked kind of cool, and I know it was a nice modern interpretation of Martian Manhunter, I really wanted this classic look. And we finally got it, so was able to pick this one up at Target, which I do believe this is a Target exclusive, if I remember correctly. And this is pretty much it. Not much to it as far as the box goes. On the back, we basically just have a picture of Martian Manhunter, the figure itself. Not really anything special there. Nothing special about the box. Typical Martian Manhunter box. You know, got the UPC there, and that's about it. So let's crack it open and see what we got inside. Alright, here he is out of the package, and he looks pretty good. And surprisingly enough, for a Mcfarlane figure, I've got him standing up without a base, which is pretty impressive right off the bat. This is a very, very rare occurrence. I don't know if the planets have aligned or what is happening here, but I have found in my experience very few Mcfarlane DC Multiverse stand up without a base right out of the box without you really having to play with them. And this guy, I basically just kind of adjusted him a little bit, stood him up, and he's standing on his own for the moment. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at him. There's really only one issue that I noticed with this. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. But as far as the sculpt goes, it looks fantastic. I love it. It looks great. We've got some minor details on the boots, texturing up here, lining here. His skin has a nice texture to it that kind of differentiates him from a typical human character. He's got really good proportions. You know, sometimes on these Mcfarlane characters, the legs can be honestly too long. They almost seemingly have a 6-inch scale upper body with really, really long legs. He looks perfect as he is. You know, we do have the typical ball joint wrists and ankles, which I am not a fan of at all. That just looks goofy right there on the wrist, but it's a Mcfarlane toy. I know what it's getting into. As far as the articulation, everything else like that goes, I mean, it's all very typical. We've got double jointed knees. We've got the ball joint wrists and ankles. We've got double jointed elbows. We've got bicep swivels. We've got the basic ball joint sockets here that we've got with all the Mcfarlane stuff. We've got the dumbbell joint there at the waist and at the torso. The belt itself is not connected to the straps here, so the straps are kind of mounted in there and attached to this lower torso piece so that they don't hinder the swivel there. He doesn't really bend forward at all because of those straps. His head also, it looks like it would have decent articulation if it wasn't for this collar on his cape. You know, he looks down fine. He's obviously got some rotation there. He can tilt a little bit. He cannot look up at all. And for a character who flies, that's him looking up. And I don't know if you noticed, but he's not looking up. The cape itself is decent. No texturing or anything like that. Very, very thin, malleable material, so it'll pose really well. Based on what you want to do with it. Typical Mcfarlane diaper piece down here, except it's a little bit better than a lot of the other ones that I've seen out there. Doesn't look as much like a diaper as a lot of them do. Again, the only issue I had on this, and I'll mention it here, I don't know if you can tell, I've got the knees totally closed. So they are fully extended, and on this knee right here, you can see we've got a gap up at the top. No gap at the bottom, gap at the top. So I don't know if the knee's cut wrong, if the holes are in the wrong position or what, but then on the opposite knee, it's the opposite problem. No gap at the top, gap at the bottom. Unfortunately, in my experience, this has kind of become typical for Mcfarlane QC. I know they're newer. I know they've only been doing DC Multiverse for a while, but Mcfarlane Toys has been around since 1995-ish. So you would think quality control would be something they would have a handle on, but they don't, unfortunately, in my experience. So But all in all, it's a good figure. I do like it. It's going to look good on the shelf. You're not going to notice the little gaps in the knees unless you really, really pay attention, especially if you've got imposed or anything like that. And your figure may come in fine with no gaps at the knees whatsoever. And just standing there on the shelf looking like this, he looks pretty good. And, you know, so all in all, I'm pretty happy with him. As far as accessories goes, he came with the typical, quote-unquote, DC Multiverse accessories, and that is to say he came with nothing. Because I do not count a base that almost all your figures require because you have kind of a crappy ankle design as an accessory. This is a necessity is what this is. The fact that he is standing without one is amazing. It's not normal for most of the DC Multiverse stuff from Mcfarlane that I've ever gotten. So, I mean, I'm glad he's standing. That's really cool. He doesn't appear to need a base at this point in time, but this certainly does not count as an accessory when it's something that most of your figures require just to sit there on the shelf. And then, of course, we have the card. Again, this is not an accessory. It's just not. This is basically kind of an evolution and a natural extension in the toy market of, you know, the old school cards on the back of the G.I. Joe packages that you would cut out that had a picture and kind of a brief description of the character. That's all this is. Again, not an accessory. He comes with one open hand, sort of, kind of, he could probably use it to hold a gun or some sort of weapon or anything like that. One closed-fisted hand on his left. Would have been nice to come with extra hands or something. Didn't. So you get one semi-open, one fisted. That's pretty much it. And that's really all you get with the figure. Now, that being said, again, I like this figure. This is a great look. This is a classic look for Martian Manhunter. The proportions are done really, really well. This guy's got great proportions. He looks good. He doesn't look out of balance, you know, in any way. Hands down, this is a great figure. I really, really do like the look of this figure. Short of the QC problem with the knees, which isn't really going to affect anything. It's just kind of a minor annoyance. Short of that, the figure's fantastic. Sculpt is great, although simple. Texturing is good. Articulation is good. The figure just looks good standing there. All in all, I'm really impressed with it. So let's compare it to a few other figures and see what we've got. Alright, so here we've got him standing next to what I think is the best Batman figure that Mcfarlane has put out, and this is the Detective Comics 1000. This is the very first kind of Batman that he put out, short of the animated Batman, which I also really like, although a very top-heavy figure. You can see they stand at just about the same height, which is a good look. And that's with Batman having the ears, which poke up just a little bit, but I think Martian Manhunter should be just a hair taller than Batman, without any sort of body armor or cowl or anything like that. It makes sense that Martian Manhunter, being an alien, would be a little bit bigger, a little taller, a little bulkier. So I think he looks really good standing next to this particular Batman figure. Definitely looks like something you would see in a good Justice League lineup. Alright, so now for a 6-inch scale comparison. This is the kind of standard Marvel Legend. This is the Bucky Cap body, which, true, is an older Buck, but it's one that's been used many, many, many times, and probably is going to continue to get used for a very long time. So you can kind of see the difference there, and they're about 3/4 of an inch apart, give or take. Still, I guess if you're dealing with human versus alien or other types of non-human characters, you could probably get away with the size difference. Human to human, it wouldn't work very well. It'd look a bit strange if you're trying to incorporate any 7-inch scale figures like this one into a 6-inch scale display or anything like that. So I probably wouldn't recommend it, but in this particular case, because he's supposed to be an alien, you could believe he's that much taller than a typical standard 6-foot tall human. That would put him at what? You know, about 6'8", 6'9". I mean, come on, he's an alien. He could probably stand that way. Obviously, he looks better with other figures in the DC Multiverse line, other 7-inch scale figures, but all in all, this could work depending on your display, but it's not what I'm going to be doing with him. Alright, so now to compare him to another basically 7-inch scale line, we've got Masters of the Universe here. This is the Multiverse stuff from Mattel. That stuff is basically 7-inch scale for the most part. Some of them are a little short, but that's fine. Here we've got him standing next to Scareglow. I think this is a good comparison. Martian Manhunter is just a hair taller, maybe 1/4 inch at best, but I think they look really good together. You know, Scareglow is a cool figure. Anyway, he could fit into a DC Multiverse lineup. If you ask me, I think you could do some pretty cool customs with this character if you wanted to turn him into a DC character. There's some cool stuff you could do, but all in all, they scale really, really well together. I think this works perfect. So if you're scaling this stuff together, if you're displaying it on the same shelf or whatever, it's going to look really, really good together. Alright, for a quick import comparison, this is an SH Figuarts Thor from Age of Ultron, and obviously the scale is way, way, way off here. I mean, Thor's supposed to be a relatively tall guy, 6 foot, let's call it 4 or 5-ish, and he just doesn't look right at all. Next to Martian Manhunter, it just doesn't look good. I don't think any of these DC Multiverse figures are going to look good standing next to any of the SH Figuarts stuff, or really, honestly, any of the imports short of maybe ZD Toys or something like that. So, quick comparison there, and then also another one I'll show you here. We've got it next to a Figma Captain America, which is even way, way, way worse. He just looks like a child next to Martian Manhunter. Alright, one more quick comparison because I mentioned it. ZD Toys, this is one of my Iron Man. This is the Iron Man Mark 6, which is also a 7-inch scale line, which I've actually worked into my 6-inch scale Marvel figures, and it looks okay there. Pretty good, actually, since he is supposed to be a guy in a suit of armor. He can get away with being a little bit taller than the rest of them. But, again, with this DC Multiverse stuff, if you wanted to display them together for any reason, don't know why you would. I keep my Marvel and DC stuff separate, but if you did, they go really, really well together. Alright guys, so the last thing to talk about here is going to be the price, and as usual, Mcfarlane DC Multiverse stuff, $19.99, 20 bucks, and it is something I truly do appreciate about Mcfarlane stuff, is they, at least at this point, have not jumped up on their prices when it comes to retail. You know, they've stayed at 20 bucks when we've seen Hasbro go to 25, 27, 29, 30, sometimes depending on the figure. I really do appreciate that Mcfarlane has kept their costs low, kept their price low. Maybe that's why they're not adding as many accessories as I'd like. I don't know, but either way, I do appreciate getting a good solid figure for $19.99. It is very much appreciated by this particular collector. So there you have it. Good price, good figure. What more is there to talk about? You can pick these guys up at Target. You can pick them up online. On Target, you can pick them up on eBay on the aftermarket. I would probably avoid that unless you absolutely cannot find them anywhere else, because they're going for 30, 35, 40, and up sometimes depending on shipping and stuff like that. So if you can get them at Target, because this is a Target exclusive, I would highly recommend doing it there. Pay the 20 bucks, even if you got to pay Target for some shipping. Do that. It's going to be cheaper than trying to go on eBay and find them on the aftermarket. So there you go, guys. Good figure. Really like it. Recommend it, especially if you're a DC fan. There you go.